So I want to get back to the dystopia versus utopia versus protopia question, but let's pause and talk a little more about the texture of the book itself. Seems to me like the chapter that, in a way, best embodies the spirit of the book is the chapter called "Flowing," and I mean that mainly just because it's called "Flowing." I mean, there's this line in there that we're talking. You say we're experiencing a quote grand move from fixity to flow. And you also say our routines and our infrastructure will be, quote, liquefied. It's, to some extent, you find that same theme in other chapters, right?
Yes, and they're all codependent on each other. They're all feeding each other.
Mm-hmm.
There's this kind of a braided, long river with many tributaries that are all feeding into. So you could slice this in 12 different ways in a certain sense. Um, yes, I mean the more AI, the more VR, the more VR, the more flowing, the more screens, and they're all certainly codependent on each other. And this I mentioned this in the very beginning. This movement of from the nouns to the verbs, from the products to the processes, and that's part of what I'm trying to hint at with that language.
Okay. Now that chapter is itself largely about what happens when you can freely copy information and cultural products, books, songs, and so on. And I'm kind of tempted to say, in a certain sense, this isn't really a qualitative change because, in a way, I mean, in other words, ever since there were books, the deal has been that humans were, in a certain sense, the copying machines for the books. I mean, they are the replicators for the books. I read a book, I like it, I say to a friend, it's a good book, and now I don't create the new copy of the book, but the fact that I've said that makes the publisher more likely to print more copies. So there is this symbiotic relationship between us and the cultural products, and you can see things kind of flowing. It's just that they're flowing super slow,
Right.
and there are a lot of constraints on how the flow can happen.
Right.
But anyway, you say that for practical purposes, we moved into a whole new kind of world, right? And what are some of the features of this world?
Yeah. So one of the things is that we, the West in particular, and maybe to the East to some extent, we have seen ourselves as people of the book, as a book-centric, a text-centric society, and even things like the root of authority comes from authors and they're being able to put something down in writing. So putting things in writing was sort of like a seminal stake. And from that also came law, which was put into writing, which was fixed in that sense. You can't really cheat it. It says it here on paper. And so we have a whole kind of a culture that revolved around things that were fixed and done and precise and black and white and highly evolved, and that kind of precision founded our culture. And now we're kind of slipped into this world in which the screen and the things flowing across the screens are becoming the center of our society. And there, you have books that are never done. They're kind of, they have versions. They're like Wikipedia that's just constantly being updated. You have things in which there's multiple versions, and you have facts. Even facts seem in some ways more slippery than before, and we don't have authorities very much. So this world in which information is flowing across the screen, never ending in updatable Facebook walls, the banners across the TV screen, your Twitter streams, all this kind of stuff, which is all flowing by. There doesn't seem to be at first the kind of fundamental gravitas, the authority of the book present in this world, and yet this is where we're moving to, and I think that changes fundamentally how we know things. I think that changes fundamentally what we think about the world, how we view even things that are ordinary, that we think is ordinary. That changes because we have this never-ending flow of superlatives, and that we're kind of inventing a culture around the screen that is where even how we assemble truth is something we have to assemble, so to speak, from this network of facts that gives us a new challenge in making sense of the world, gives us a new challenge in guiding our values, gives us a new challenge in even determining what we accept as being true and what we think we know.